It's a coffee talk.
With like really hot coffee.
With really hot. So you're gonna use the coffee talk intro. I love that intro.
You want me to? I need the hard drive. I accidentally left it on there.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So we've got another blizzard outside.
Yes.
Which is fantastic. Hey,
Jeez.
I hate to sound older than I am, but we need the precipitation.
No, I know we do. But...
So we're talking about ASR today. It's one of my favorite subjects. I'm a student of ASR, and there are much smarter people than me out there that have talked about it. But we're gonna. Thanks, baby. I wrote the book.
He did.
It's a good book. $14.99. We'll include the link below. That was a pitch. So welcome to Intelligent Concrete. The question was, John, can you explain the difference between short-term versus long-term ASR? You know, I love these questions.
Right.
I do. I really, really do. I'm not being a little snarky brat. The question was short-term versus long-term. So we're going to answer it in 4 different ways, right? The first way is short-term versus long-term ASR. Where have we seen it? Do you remember the different time frames?
72 hours.
72 hours.
The one I'm the most familiar with because it's the one we do the most is the more traditional 14 to 28 day test.
Then the 12 month to 18 month.
12 month to 18 month. The
And
super
then
long term.
The long term years.
So there's longer than 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, when you put like Treat Island or just looking at structures. So the question was, how soon have you seen ASR? How late have you seen ASR? And the soonest we've seen ASR is within a 24th of 72 hour period. It was an environment we created in the lab based off of a PCA test done in 1969.
Jeez, was it that? Oh.
It might not have been that long ago. I'm just trying to do it off of memory. I mean, we just got this stuff right now. So we can get the link below. Thanks, Patchouli. But it's an environment where you have the alkalis and the surface area from the finer particles to create the coronas of gel, and you got to have the heat to excite that reaction. Whether the slab is covered, and then you have the moisture and all that jazz. 72 hours. That's the soonest, the 24 to 72 hour window. That's the soonest we've seen it.
Right.
And just through the regular tests that we've done, which we'll talk about later, but the longer time you have with relative humidity and free alkalis that are ready to change the pH at the interfacial zone with that moisture, and then of course that type of silica, as long as you have that pessimum, that environment,
it will eventually grow.
The thing that's going to make it happen sooner is how much you have, the electrical potential of that environment, and of course heat.
Heat's huge. It's, major catalyst for reactions in general. So
all those things combined. Now, that being said, the maintenance of mainly that moisture, I mean, once you start creating that gel and start creating those tensile forces, start getting cracks, you'll have more pathways for moisture in those alkalis. So as long as you maintain the moisture by that interfacial zone, now that maturing gel, it's going to happen over a longer period of time. And that's why, places like Treat Island are great because you have a lot of moisture, you have wetting and drying cycles, you have cracking, and then of course you put in the concrete.
Right.
We're moving on to the different tests.
Okay, sure.
Which, you've already started that.
Right.
The discussion on the PCA test. What other tests do we really like?
It's the standard, ASTMC 1260 and 1567.
Why do you like?
Well, they're fairly straightforward.
Yep.
You have a very controlled environment.
Yeah, you have a standard environment.
You have a standard controlled environment. Once you learn how to do it, I remember when we very first started doing it, it's hot. I know. Yeah, well, we're sharing. Anyways, so in the lab, that's the one I like. 1260, 1567. The titration is a little tricky, but once you get used to it, it's not terrible. Have a fun little story time about that later.
I like it because it's easy to reproduce.
Yes, absolutely.
And a lot.
And they're not huge samples, which I like. It's the mortar samples, the 1 inch by 1 inch by 11 inch beam. So
and is it a realistic environment?
No, but I mean, generally with lab tests, abrasion and all those things, you are putting it in an incredibly aggressive environment to try to get an idea of what's going to happen longer term in the field. You're trying to figure out the failure.
Instead of saying longer term in the field, because there are a lot of folks on this video that might call, heresy on that, or hearsay. I don't know how to say it.
It's heresy.
Is it heresy? It might be hearsay too.
It could be. Could be Bob.
It could be Bob. Oh, Bob. Oh, Bob. So I think it's a better way of saying it. It's a test that lets us know the potential.
Sure. Okay.
That there is a potential based on this given environment using these materials. Now, the way we look at it is, I believe, a potential for the aggregate. And I see it more of a test as what we can do to protect and shield in this aggressive environment.
Sure.
To change that pessimism, if you will. Is it realistic?
No, but oftentimes.
Should it be used as a pass-fail? I think there's some advantages, disadvantages to using it.
I agree.
I think putting a finite,
stamp, yes
true,
or no,
false,
or,
1, 0 binary.
I think
dangerous.
You rarely can do that. I think in general, all data that you get is just information.
Now,
and you try to collect as much information as you can to make your best judgment for moving forward.
So let's skip over to that longer term test, because then we're going to get the finger from Patchouli.
Right.
The 18-month test, the 1293. Why don't folks like to use it?
Well, do you even have the same aggregate?
Oh, yeah.
And that's the thing.
Right.
We've done that test for some of the ready mix providers that we've worked with, and you start running it, but then the pits change. Like once you start that test, and once you get to the end of it, and you have that information in 12 or 18 months, are you still using that aggregate? Like, is the information even relevant anymore? And that's why I like the 14 to 28 day test, because it's information quickly that you can use to kind of evaluate and plan accordingly.
This is a wonderful discussion. You're going to see why I am the doctor and I've been the professor, and Whitney is still the student.
I would tread softly there, friends.
No, seriously.
Keep in mind who's making your dinner tonight.
That is a very short-term practical,
Right.
short-term decision.
Right.
What you can do is, let's say, look at the efficiency of a plant, or the change in virgin aggregate. No, seriously. To look at the trends and where we're going in all materials, because if we could take the same cement manufacturer that used the same kiln and the same ish property or procedures for creating a cement, or we could see the changes and the impact of those properties on the cement, and the biggest thing that's changing is what?
The aggregate.
Time. The biggest thing that is changing is time.
Sure.
And we can see geographically, if we did a number of cement plants,
Right.
how the industry needs are changing the standard operating procedures and the changes in the cement and the ASR from the quarries. And again, how they're changing their gradations, a vintage, if you will.
Sure. And I guess if you're doing it more for historical data, that is...
It's called a histogram.
That's great, but I mean, again, it's
But
not
what?
information that you can use to make decisions right now.
Absolutely, it's a decision to help you make decisions.
Right
if
now,
you correlated,
right now.
if you
Eventually-
correlated that same wealth of information, folks, I just want you to see the fists. The fist. I mean, we work on boxing, right? So when those fists close, like, you can hear the vacuum of intensity. So yes, you can use it to make decisions if you keep a good enough set of histograms or that historical data, and let's say you paired it up with Class F fly ash, and you can see the change or the gradient change, the impact of inconsistency over time on ASR. Now, if you saw that as a ready-mix provider, you could make the decision to say, should I stay with something that eventually will break? And maybe using a linear extrapolation, I can guess when that's going to happen.
Okay.
So should I make a decision now?
To jump ship on that.
Or as a cement provider, if I see the end, because the cement providers rely on Class F fly ash, just like we do.
Sure.
So if they can see the end is nigh,
Oh my God.
they can offer a product or go after a product
Right.
that can take that fly ash's place.
They can, but I feel like that is rarely done. I think oftentimes
Just
people are
because it's
grasping for
rarely
stuff.
done doesn't mean it's a bad idea.
Agree to disagree. No, I agree with you. You make valid points. Yeah.
So based
I
on
see your
we've
point.
actually discussed all of that in
Yes.
here. So Whitney and I inadvertently had discussed the next section, materials.
Right.
And the reality is, between the late 1990s and today, cement and supplementary cementitious materials have changed drastically.
Right.
Between the beginning of time and about 10,000, 15,000 years ago, aggregate has changed dramatically.
Right.
or if you believe biblical terms, a few thousand years ago.
Right.
But aggregate has changed before our use of it in concrete that we know of. More importantly, we've used up a lot of the really good aggregate,
the less reactive,
for ASR, which make them full circle. So we did already talk about materials. Then we talked about some other tests that are not used that often. We haven't talked about that because we only mentioned the 72-hour test, the ASTMC 1260, 1567, the ASTMC 1293, and then Treat Island, the universities or other companies. Other tests that we didn't mention, different experiments.
Sure.
One of which is a British standard, British BS 7943, the ASR gel pat test.
Oh, sure.
We actually wrote a paper on it that I feel like was published but might have been rejected.
I'm not sure. I feel like you read portions of that though on one of the videos.
I did?
I feel like
it's
you
fantastic.
did. You were like just.
It is a fantastic.
You were super into it.
It is a great article or a great test that has been redone using ASTM, but I think the BS is a little bit better.
Right.
The BS is a little bit harder to do.
Okay.
I did mine at the Army Corps, and
Right.
they actually hovered. Now, a lot of folks don't like this test, especially the folks that helped me, do the test did not appreciate it as much as I did. But it allows you to look at the development of the ASR gel under a non-disturbed environment,
Sure.
or as close to a non-destructive environment that you get. You have this rapid drying of the gel, so there is some fracture from that.
Sure.
But that being said, it's wild.
Yeah.
Looking at that gel. So what's one more test do you think that's not used? And then we can wrap it up here.
One more test that's not used?
Yeah.
The 72-hour ones are fairly new,
fairly.
so I feel like they're
No,
just...
they're not.
They're not?
No, that's actually an older test, and that's what I was bringing up.
Okay.
It's either in 69 or 78 that those tests were run.
Yeah, I feel like your ASTMs are your most common. Your
Yeah, and there's
1260,
so much.
1567, and then your 1293.
So you think using
I would say
that...
the 72-hour. I am not overly familiar with the 72-hour test.
So the 72-hour test is where you take a form of concrete slab that has the materials that you're concerned about, and you're creating not only a heated environment but a humid environment, so that you retain that moisture where you would normally, if you would create that heated environment without moisture, dehydrated that surface.
Okay.
Now that you've created that heated moisture environment, assuming you have the silicas and the alkalis, silicas from the sands and the fines, and the alkalis from the cement and the cementitious or the admixtures, you're creating that pessimum or that environment for that ASR gel to thrive and survive, if not in little rosettes, in clumps of things that look like coronas.
Okay.
And that's all done in 24 to 72 hours.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this wonderful coffee talk today.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're going to be doing a contest. If you like, subscribe, ding the bell, we'll be giving you a you enter in for a drawing to get a handheld penetrometer.
Very good.
A drawing of a kitten. No. Anyway, I think we're giving out, I keep saying 7.
3.
3.
We're giving out 3.
Handheld penetrometers. So we're excited to share. Go concrete!
Beat asphalt!